Hello and welcome back to the Dandelion Diaries. We have another ink exploration today and it is our last greens. I'm sad because I love green inks and we're in the last category and I have to leave it at this. If we keep going with greens, we'll be here forever. So this will be the last category of greens I do, and that is gray-green inks. But let's talk a little bit about supplies. I have a A5 Hobonichi notebook here with the original Tomoe River paper. I have a condiment cup, which is what I use for swatching, which was inspired by Leanne Likes. I have a Kakimori brass tip pen with a Sakura wood handle from Galen Leather. I have a 5% off for them in the description if you're interested. And then I have a eyedropper here, which is what I use to drop the inks down onto the page. And then I have a jar of water up there. And then this is a t-shirt that I have been using as a kind of towel situation, and it looks more tie-dye-y. I ended up finishing my old t-shirt up because it was just getting too much filled with ink and making it a little bit messy. So we started a new used shirt the last video that I did like this. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our swatches. We have 11 samples today, although 2 of them might be considered bottles, but we're just going to call them samples for now. But the first one I want to take you through is Sailor Yurameku Sukigokoro. And I consider this one a gray-green. It is maybe more of like a green-black, but I still think it's a little bit more gray, just a darker gray at that. And you're probably thinking when I first laid down this swatch that, Danielle, that is not a green at all. It is blue. But you'll see as it dries down on the page, it actually turns a lot more green-gray, which is why I keep it in this category. It does also have a little bit of the chroma shading, which is common in several of the Sailor inks, whether it be the Manyo line, the Shikiori line, or the Yurameku line, or even some of their studio inks. They all tend to have a little bit of uniqueness to them. Which brings me to our next ink sample, Sailor Manyo Shirakashi. And if you haven't seen my collection video where I did all of the Sailor Manyo inks, I'll be sure to leave that up in the cards for you guys. It was really interesting to see all of them all lined up together. Granted, I don't have full bottles of any of them. They were all sample sizes that I swatched from, but it was really cool to see the different variations of the different blues and purples, and then even some of their other colors like the reds, blacks, and greens. When I originally swatched this ink, I wanted to include it in my dark greens category, but I felt as it dried down, it was a little more gray, just like a dark green gray, and I didn't want to solely put it with the dark greens because I felt like it didn't really match any of the other inks that I was putting in that category. This ink is honestly a fabulous journaling ink, as many of these Sailor inks are. This one is kind of a dark green, black, grayish color, and I feel like when you're writing with it, it can change. So depending on which pen you have it in, it does change a little bit of color, depending on how the paper is and how the pen is that you're writing with. Since Sailor inks are a little bit wetter, I feel like they have variance when you write with them. The next ink we have is Jacques Herbin Vert Empire. Vert Empire or Vert Empire, pronunciation again is not my strong suit, but I feel like this ink is a very good classic writer. If you're looking for just a simple go-to grayish green ink, this is your winner hands down. I really love how this ink shades too. I feel like it has a nice muted tone to it where it's not too flashy. So if you wanted to consider this work appropriate, I think you could, but it is just a little bit more green, so maybe not. The next ink we have is another from the Sailor Yurameku line, and this is Kyokuya, I believe. And when I first swatched this one, I was like, it's just gray. It is solely gray. There's nothing super special about it. It's just a gray ink. And boy, was I wrong. This ink shades so beautifully, and I hope you get to see it because it doesn't always shade. I know that sounds kind of sad, but when I've swatched it before, like I said, I thought it was just a plain green ink, but then I swatched it again on a little piece of paper that I was using as swatch cards, and it showed this beautiful shade to it. And yes, both of them were Tomoe River paper, so I don't know what happened with my first swatch, but This one is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm super excited to do a collection video with all of the Yurameku inks as well. The next ink I have here is DeAtramentis Document Green Gray. I felt it was very appropriate to include this ink considering it says green gray in the actual name. However, I'll let you be the decider if you think this is actually a green gray color, because I don't think it's actually green gray. I feel like it's just more of a muddy medium green. But you tell me when we get to the dried swatches what you think. As I've said before, with many of the DeAtramentis document line, they have so many colors to choose from. I feel like they have the whole rainbow and then some, and I feel like that's excellent. But each of these inks are considered very permanent, and they are waterproof to my knowledge. I will say that DeAtramentis inks are very wet writers, so if you need something that's very wet for a dry pen, I highly recommend the DeAtramentis brand just because they do a very good job with making their inks extra juicy. Moving on to the other side of the page, we have Sailor Shikiori Miruai? Let me know. Again, I did do a collection video for this one as well, so if you're interested, I will be sure to link it up in the cards, and that way you can check out this one too. I feel like these Sailor collections are so unique in that they kind of need to have all of their colors swatched together just so you can make an informed decision on how many bottles you're actually going to buy. Because if you're like me, you would want to buy all of them and then realize that you don't need all of them. Or you would just buy all of them anyways because you just write that much, and I'm getting to the point where I write so much in my journals, I kind of need full bottles of ink for every single color. I again wasn't sure whether I wanted to include this ink in the dark green inks or in the green grays, and I'm kind of glad I went with the green grays just because I feel like it's more of a green black even, and dark green didn't really fit this one to me. With the sheen that it has as well when it dries, it does not look very green. So hopefully when we get to the dried swatches, you'll see what I mean and why I placed it in this specific greens category versus in the dark green category. Next we have Ferrisville Press Moss Park Green. And I'm not going to say too much about this one. And the reason I'm not going to say too much about it is because it is so unique and so beautiful, and I have never found another ink like it. So if you can get your hands on a full bottle of Ferrisville Press Moss Park Green, I don't think you would be disappointed. The only thing I will say about this ink's color is that I feel like gray green is why this color exists. This is the embodiment of what gray green is to me, and when it dries, I hope you understand what I'm saying. The next ink we have is Diamine Alpine, and it is a shimmer ink from the 2022 green edition of the Diamine Ink Vent Calendar. This is the only shimmery gray-green ink I have actually in my entire collection, and I'm not even sure if there's another gray-green shimmery ink out there. So if you happen to know of another ink that is shimmery and gray-green, please leave it down in the comments so all of us can go find it and try it out. Diamine Alpine is definitely a beautiful greenish gray color. I feel like it's a little bit darker, so maybe more of, again, that kind of greenish black. But it does have that beautiful shimmer to it, which is kind of a silvery color, which I feel makes it more gray and why I put it in this category. Next we have another Sailor ink. I feel like Sailor dominates the off gray colored world, but this is Sailor Shikiori Rikyucha. Again, my pronunciation is not my strong suit. But after swatching this one, again, I wasn't really sure if I should consider it a dark green or if I should consider it a green gray or even a green black. Again, since I'm not going to be doing any more green explorations after this, I wanted to include it because it is a beautiful green ink, and I will let you guys decide for me in the comments. When it comes to this ink being dried down, much again like those other Sailor inks, it has very unique qualities to it that I feel make it absolutely stunning to look at and to write with. It does have a bit of a sheen to it, so as it dries down, it may not look as gray or green anymore. It may even look a little bit red. The next ink sample we have here is Wearingeul's Mad Hatter. I love the Alice in Wonderland line from Wearingeul. I think it is fabulous. They have a mix of shimmer, they have a mix of standard, and they have a mix of shaders. And I'll let you guess which one this one is. Being that it's called Mad Hatter, I feel is absolutely adorable, and the fact that they made it green just makes me happy because the Mad Hatter is one of my favorite characters in the Alice in Wonderland series. Again, when it comes to the color gray-green, I feel like Wearingeul nailed it on the head with this one, being that it is very green but also very gray. But at the same time, I feel like when this one dries, you'll see what I mean by it's a very unique ink as well, similar to the Ferris Wheel Press Moss Park Green. One thing I really do like about the Wearingeul brand is that they theme their inks based on literature. I think it's really cool that they have different series like Shakespeare, Alice in Wonderland, and even some of the more ancient writers. So be sure to check them out if you're interested in some pretty cool looking inks. The last sample I have, I wanted to include in this category, and that is Sailor Yurameku Amamoyoi. Amamoyoi. I'll try to put the text on the screen. I'm pretty sure it's Amamoyoi, but this one, I don't know if we can consider it gray or green, or is it brown? It's just a very unique ink, and I wanted to be sure to include it because it is technically green, but I think it's also technically brown, and I think it's also technically gray. Again, Sailor does it again with the chroma shading inks and their variety of colors that they tend to showcase. So you'll see after I swatch it that it looks almost pink, right? And then it has kind of a green tint to it. Well, when it dries down, it changes color completely, and I'm excited for you guys to see that. Out of all of these Sailor Yurameku inks, I feel like the ones I have on this page, whether it be the Yurameku Sukigokoro, or the Kyokuya, or even the Amamoyoi. I feel like any of these Sailor Yurameku inks are good, but I feel like the ones I have on these pages here are some of my favorites and the ones I would definitely consider getting full bottles of. Alright, so this is all I have for the gray-green inks. I'm going to let these dry down and I will see you guys in a minute. Alrighty, so they are all dried down. I'm going to zoom you guys in and we're going to do some close-ups. Starting off with our first swatch, that Sailor Yurameku Sukigokoro, and it is so pretty. It's this dark gray-green with that bright red sheen. It looks so beautiful. Like I said, I really wanted to include this in this specific category just because I feel like it embodies more of a gray-green than a black or a blue or anything else. Then we had Sailor Manyo Shirakashi, and again, I feel like this is a warmer version of the Sukigokoro, but it is still beautiful. And look at that shading that it has. It's almost this dark navy color, and it has this red-black sheen. Absolutely stunning. Then we had 𝗪𝗏 or Vert Empire. Again, pronunciation is not my strong suit, but this is truly what gray-green is. It is this beautiful kind of light greenish shade that is muted down to a cloud, and then it has this dark, beautiful, dark gray shading to it. I really like this ink and definitely am glad I have 10 milliliters to get through before I buy another bottle of it, but I can see why it is such a popular fan favorite. Then we had Sailor Yurameku Kyokuya, I think is how you pronounce that one. This one, again, I wasn't sure if the shading would pick up, and I'm so glad that it did. You can see that it starts off this kind of like grayish color and goes into this dark purpley blue shade, and it does have a very minor red-black sheen. It is stunning. It is such a beautiful ink color. Sailor really does a fabulous job with their chroma shading and just overall uniqueness of their inks. Then we had DeAtramentis Document Green Gray. I'm not a fan of this one, honestly. I know it says green gray in the name, but to me it is too muted. Like there's not enough green in it for it to be green gray. And I know next to, like if we put it next to the Jaques one, like you can see what I mean. The Jaques one looks green and gray. The DeAtramentis one just looks blah. Like it's not as exciting. It is a document ink though, and if you wanted to go for this kind of color scheme, it definitely does fit the colorway, and it is a permanent ink. I just, of all the other inks I could choose from, I don't think I would go with this one. Then we had Sailor Shikiori Miruai, and again, it's almost green-black, but I wanted to include it in the green grays because I felt like it fit better here. It has this beautiful red sheen to it. It's not all the way dry, by the way, I just realized that, but it does have this beautiful red sheen to it and is absolutely gorgeous. In a writing sample, though, it does appear much more black than it does green-gray, so just keep that in mind. Then we had Ferris Press Moss Park Green. Let me tell you, this ink just, it steals my heart every time I see it. It's this beautiful green-gray, and it turns into this gorgeous muddy tan shade in the middle. Just so pretty. It has no sheen, no shimmer, very standard, just beautiful, beautiful shading. Then we had our Diamine Alpine, and I feel like, again, this is very much a green-gray, and with that silver shimmer, it just adds oomph to the page. It makes it extra, extra. And I think it's a little bit darker in writing compared to like Moss Park Green, but it is still a beautiful green-gray color, and I definitely am glad I put it in this category. Then we had Sailor Shikiori Rikyucha. Again, pronunciation is not my strong suit, but this one, again, I feel like is like the Sailor Manyo Shirakashi. It doesn't really fit in any category, but I think it blends in with these ones the best. It is more of a greenish, olivey, gray, black color. Yeah, it does have some shading into that navy color yet again, and that red sheen. Actually, if you wanted to put both the Rikyucha and the Shirakashi on the same page, you could probably tell that they're almost the same color. They do have very similar shading, and they do have very similar sheening. So that's a very interesting thing. I never thought to put these different collections side by side. I may have to do that at some point. Then we had Wearingeul's Mad Hatter, and this one, again, isn't completely dry, so I do apologize, but you can see how beautiful it shades. It is much like the Ferris Press Moss Park Green in that it has this grayish shade to it, but not as tan as the Moss Park Green. This one is a beautiful writer. I really am strongly debating on getting a full bottle. Wearingeul is a little bit more expensive than some of the other inks, as is Ferris Press, but I feel like the quality of their inks and the range of colors is insane, so maybe worth it for the dollar point if you have a need for this color of ink. And then lastly, again, I wanted to put this one in this category. It is the only one that doesn't really look like all of the others, and that is Sailor Yurameku Amamoyoi. I don't know if I can say that again, so we're going to leave it at that. It is green, it is gray, it is pink, it is tan, it is beige. It's a rainbow ink in my opinion, but I feel like because it has this green shading to it and more of a gray undertone, it should fit in this category, although some may say it'd probably fit better in a pink category just because of all of the pink shading it has in the middle. But I don't know, you tell me. It is a beautiful ink, and it is very gorgeous to write with. It is a little bit lighter, so if you like lighter inks, this is definitely one I would pick up. Alright, this is all I have for my gray-green inks. I am sad to see the green ink explorations coming to an end, but I'm happy to end on a note like this one with all of these unique chroma shaders and fun inks to look at. Let me know which one you think is your favorite down in the comments. I definitely really love the Ferris Press Moss Park Green, the Herbin Vert Empire, and also the Yurameku Kyokuya and the Yurameku Amamoyoi. Let me just say, every single ink on this page is beautiful, and they are all very similar. So if you wanted to pick up one over the other, I don't think you'd be missing out in terms of documenting your life in whatever color you wanted to. If you're interested in more of my ink explorations or any of the other colors I have done, I will leave the playlist down in the description and also put it up in the cards. And if you're interested in following me over on Instagram, I will leave my handle on the screen. I do put sneak peeks there of different ink swatches that I do, and also post lots of planner content. But for now, I thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I am so excited to continue our ink explorations together, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.